That's fine.
No, it looks like it should be.
Unless I can take my dog with me. My son I can't. Dog I
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting on November 19th, 2013. Can we all rise for the pledge led by Supervisor Munzer? Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Supervisor Munzer, and everyone for participating in the pledge. Can I have a motion for a certificate of posting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. We'll move on to public comment this morning. We have any speakers?
Yes, we do. Felicitas Corona.
Good morning. On behalf of Maria Perez, she promised she was going to be here, and she's not here. I just simply want to say to you supervisors that since you canceled the last meeting, that we just simply need for you to reopen our negotiations. Please, we need your help. On behalf of everybody, I'm sorry, I need to say on behalf of everybody who's here and who's not here, thank you.
Cynthia Abrams.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Good morning. I'm going to just second what Felicita has said about our union negotiations being needed. It's 40 cents an hour raise and 20 cents for vision and dental. And I moved here from Washington State earlier this year, and I was really quite surprised at the difference of how people value caregivers and what their wages are and their plans for health care. So I know it's just a matter of being aware. It's not that you don't care. And it's just for the vulnerable who are really taking care of the less vulnerable. So if you could reopen your negotiations, it would just be a big, huge benefit for all of our lives. And I just want to say that this group that I joined from SEIU here in San Benito County, they're just wonderful. They're such loving, caring people, and they deserve the very best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Richmond.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Marty Richmond from Hollister. Just a note for the public that there will be a forum tomorrow at 5:30 Wednesday at the library concerning the future, the current issues and future issues regarding the San Benito County Free Library. And it's open to the public. I think people who have ideas about the library, whether you like it or don't like it, support it or don't support it, I think the public should come because it's an important forum to discuss the issues. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thank you for bringing up that meeting tomorrow night at the library. Anybody else would like to address the board before we move on? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to department head announcements.
Mr. Chair, we don't have any announcements today.
Okay, thank you. Board announcements. Supervisor Rivas? Okay, Supervisor David Cruz?
Yes, I attended the Veterans Memorial Day function, and thank you to all our men and women of our services. They really do a good job protecting our rights. I also like to commend Supervisor Munzers for giving a well-spoken speech. Good job. Thank you, Supervisor Munzer.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Supervisor David Cruz. Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to thank Supervisor Munzer for a different thing.
He was instrumental, along with the other committee members for United Way, to put on the extravaganza that they put on Saturday. It was very successful. They raised some money for nonprofits in San Benito County, and they kicked off the 12 days of giving that is going to culminate, I believe, on Lights On. And this is an opportunity for the community to give, and their dollars will be matched dollar per dollar up to a certain amount. And so you just have to call Community Foundation of San Benito County, and it can be done through the website. I believe that's one way of doing it. Okay. And I also attended Philanthropy Day, National Philanthropy Day at San Juan Oaks. A lot of folks in the community, over almost 50, were honored for their giving their time, their efforts in making nonprofits in San Benito County the success that they are. So I want to thank everybody that participated in that. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just too want to thank the veteran service organizations for putting on the Veterans Day program and the parade, and just want to thank the public for their support. The parade is growing. It was fantastic to see all the people lining San Miguel Street during the parade. And I want to thank everyone that supported the United Way dinner, and that being Supervisor Barrios and Supervisor Patello coming out and supporting us, and everyone that came and gave that Saturday night. Thank you.
Great. Yes, we certainly had a couple of weeks where there was a number of events in San Diego County, Hollister, and I appreciate all the supervisors for participating in those events. I think it's important to be out there and, you know, working with the community, and importantly with the United Way event. It shows that everybody's working together, all the different organizations, to, you know, fulfill their missions, but still being sensitive to all the needs in our county, and that's a real good thing, and hopefully it continues to grow.
I have one more item, Mr. Chair, that I had forgotten. I want to thank Supervisor Rivas as well, because he represented the board at the breakfast to honor the Veteran of the Year, and I was honored to be invited by him to go up to present that certificate. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The board is pull items 5, 7, and 8, and I'm going to abstain from item number 11 because of a potential conflict of interest. I manage a piece of property adjacent to that project. Would the public would like to pull any other items than what I mentioned? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the amended.
I'll move approval of the amended the consent calendar, Mr. Chair.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Item 5, I pulled that, and I just wanted to kind of go over the contract a little bit. We're allocating $20,000 to the UC University of California. I suppose that's for the extension services.
Yeah, that was during our budget hearings. We actually allocated $20,000. That was presented to your board with the approval during the budget hearings for that. They were requesting personnel to assist them, county personnel, but we didn't feel it was appropriate or fit to bring on employees and paying for their benefits, so on and so forth. So basically, we gave them a allotted amount of money just to bring in some support and help for them.
Right. Reason, you know, I pulled this, something came up this week in conversation. I think we're discussed the issue at a facilities meeting that Supervisor Barrios and I have on December 2nd, is can we utilize some of those funds if the occupancy requirements for possibly rent or something like that change? Is that something that could be used with this money? And that's why I read the contract, that money is available for use if added expenses are incurred.
Ultimately, I mean, that's a possibility. The ultimate reason for that was to get assistance for them to help out with their paperwork and and to do their work. But yes, I believe the way the contract's written, you are correct with that.
Okay.
Those things.
Because it is kind of, for a contract, it's pretty vague as far as the scope of services and the scope of work for that money. And it does state that we hope that maybe we don't use the full amount. That's all the questions I had. Any other questions from the board? Any questions, comments from the public? If not, I'll make a motion to approve item 5.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, hearing none. Item 7, I pulled that one too. I gotta admit, I have a problem with allowing this attorney that worked for us go to the other side to work for the same development in the same area for the other side of the table. I think there's a gazillion attorneys out there. There are a dime a dozen. Why does, this Rancho Gavilan Corporation need to hire somebody that was working for us and rather than not some other well-qualified attorney that's probably available out there?
Well, I haven't spoken to Ms. Barclay, so I can't really answer that question. The little that I've heard on it from Ms. Murphy is that these people that are hiring Ms. Barclay are a new group that's broken away from, apparently the property has been split up, and this particular family, and the name escapes me right at the moment, has taken a portion of the property, and I believe they are interested in Ms. Barclay because she had previous knowledge of the development, and so the learning curve for her wouldn't be as high.
Yeah, I can't support this item. I think that there's just something fishy about the whole thing, and this lawyer made a lot of money off of the county, and even in the staff report, in her letter requesting this, I think there's a mission of potential conflict with the knowledge that she has in her stating that she won't use any of that knowledge. But, that's just not right. It's not ethically correct. I think this attorney knows it. We know it. And I hope the board does not support waiving her, ability to go work for somebody else and another law firm and work on the other side of the issue. Supervisor Rivas?
Mr. Chair, I would request that if County Council feels strongly that we need to move forward, that this be agendized on a regular agenda at a future meeting so we could have a discussion on it.
Okay.
But I won't support it as a consent item today. Thank you.
Okay. Any, Supervisor Munzer?
I guess, Matt, is it the family, is it the Floriani family?
I believe so.
Okay.
And let me make one clarification. It's the Board of Supervisors that hold the privilege, not County Council. So the decision, yes, it's my item that we brought forward for the board. Well, I know that we've made a request to waive the conflict, and it's up to the board whether they want to waive that conflict or not. The County Council's office, when we looked at it, and Ms. Murphy can provide some more details, she just stepped in, it's not our choice, okay? It's not our decision. So all we are is a conduit to bring it to the board for its decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt, it's my understanding that most of this information was not confidential. Everything was, was never a closed session item. Any information is public information, and if there is any confidential information at all, they will not be disclosing. If she has any knowledge of any confidential information, it will not be disclosed. But I don't believe this was a confidential project. It was out there, it was public, and am I wrong?
So Ms. Murphy's here. She has some more details. She can address the board, and she was involved at the time that this project was before the county, so she can give you some better idea about the length and extent of Ms. Barclay's involvement.
Good morning. Shirley Murphy, Deputy County Counsel. At the time that the El Rancho San Benito project was being processed, she represented the county. And we talked at some length, both Barbara Thompson and I and Matt and I, about because of the length of time and change of, circumstances over time, any potentially confidential or inside information she might have gained from representing the county is probably, it's not really relevant anymore because things have changed, or, the philosophies of different people in various departments has changed. So it doesn't appear to us that there's any kind of insider information that she may have gained back then that would be particularly relevant now. And it is a completely different, I guess the property owners that she was approached by them to represent them, they actually owned the property at the time, but the applicants at the time had an option to purchase it, which has now expired. So they're not connected with the original project or the original applicants anymore. They have a whole new team of people, and they're interested in exploring the development of their property. So they had approached her to represent them, but it's completely within the board's discretion whether you want to agree to allow her to represent them or not. We just brought it forward to you for your consideration.
Okay,
Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I have questions. Why, Ms. Barclay, if you're the Rancho Gavilan Corporation, she resigned from her previous law firm to go work for another law firm that had no connection, like what you just stated. That's fine. But why, Ms. Barclay? It's not like she's the only game in town. There's no offense to the lawyers in the room, but there are a dime a dozen, and a lot of them are pretty qualified. And I just think that, of course, May, and you're very careful in your word selection, not disclose any confidential information and so forth. Why even take a chance? Get another lawyer, and we'll be happy. They'll be happy, and we just move forward without even having some sort of level of suspicion that some hanky-panky's not going on.
And that's completely your prerogative as the board. If you are uncomfortable with this, that's your call.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board for Ms. Murphy? Any questions or comments from the public? Please step forward.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Board. This item, in my opinion, is wrong on so many levels. I don't believe it should be on the consent calendar. I think that you absolutely need to have an open hearing on this. The way this item was presented to the public, they would never, ever understand that we're actually waiving conflict for an attorney that worked for us. And Anthony, I can assure you, we paid a lot more than a dime for this attorney. She was extremely, extremely expensive. This attorney worked on strategies with the county. Now, those strategies might have changed. I understand that. But why take that chance? The other problem with this is not even an issue yet. There is no project that I'm aware of. Why are we working on this? It doesn't have a reimbursement agreement yet. How much time and money are we spending on this? We went through this the last time this project came forward, or at least a portion of this project, and they went on for 2 years coming before the board, asking questions, having staff time. We spent thousands of dollars not being reimbursed. Don't make that mistake again. But I urge you not to allow this item to go forward, especially on consent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Marty Richmond again from Hollister. I don't think this item is worthy of your consent, standing strictly on its own merits. The reason is, and I'm not questioning anybody's, I don't think lawyers are a dime a dozen. I wish they were. I'd have 12 of them. But I'm not questioning anybody's integrity because I don't know the people involved. And on the face of it, I think most people have integrity. I just think that there is the potential conflict, which I don't think anybody can deny, because people pick up things, even they're unawares that they pick up certain pieces of information. And even if they use them unawares, it's the reason that when you have a conflict, you have to step out of the room. I think there is a potential conflict of interest that you just will not be able to overcome because of the situation. Let me put it that way. So without impinging anybody's integrity at all, or the reason they want to hire, I think people should hire whoever they want to hire. But I do believe in this case that there's just there's going to be a conflict, and whether it becomes to the forefront and obvious or not obvious, there's also going to be this perception by the public that there's a conflict, and it'll be impossible to state categorically that the person involved did not even unknowingly use information they picked up working for the county on this particular one. I think the relationship is just too close, and I believe you should not approve this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? If not, I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion or an action.
Mr. Chair, it appears to me that it needs to be on a regular agenda and maybe give people an opportunity more folks to come up. Maybe it may have been missed on a consent agenda item. So my recommendation would be to agendize it as a regular item.
Okay, Supervisor Rivas, that was kind of along the lines you were...
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I think that rather than come back as a regular item specifically for a contract with this attorney, that we just have more of a general a discussion about what we want to do, whether we want to move forward with a different attorney or whatnot. So if we could get that flexibility.
Well, Supervisor Rivas, we're not contracting with anybody. There's no contract that the county's involved with. Simply a former attorney that worked for the county has come forward and said, we'd like to have the waiver so we can go work for someone else. So there's really nothing to bring this back for a regular hearing. We have no more information to add to what's other than what's already been said today. It's simply up to the board. We've gotten an outside request from a third-party attorney. Will the county waive the conflict? It's up to the board whether it wants to waive it or not. If the board says we don't want to waive it, end of story.
Yeah.
Well, I'm ready to say I don't want to move forward with this. Whether we want to agendize it for a regular hearing at a future date, at a later time, I'm open to that. So, but I can't move forward with this consent item today.
Mr. Chair,
Supervisor De La Cruz.
motion to deny.
I got it's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. So staff will write a letter of denial.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll move on to item 8. Supervisor Barrios?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I pulled that one because I was just a little confused on the amount. The transmittal had 50,000 on it, but we are actually approving 17,500. And then I did the math because it's a 3-year contract to see if maybe it added up to 50,000 and it didn't. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm missing something. So if you could clarify that, I would appreciate it.
Sure, I understand your confusion. So we received $50,000 one time for us to secure a system. The system is actually costing us $5,000 a year. We're paying upfront 3 years and a $2,500 setup fee for a total contract amount of $17,500. The remaining from the $50,000 will be used for other approved department needs that needs to be spent by the end of this year.
So the 50,000 was allocated to San Benito County, but we have
For
to.
the LIHEAP program, yeah.
Yeah, so but we have to match it with 5,000 a year plus the 2,500 for.
So part of the $50,000, the $17,500 are part of those $50,000. So we're using $17,500 for the purchase of the software system.
Okay.
That'll carry us for 3 years.
All right, so the 17,000, the 50,000 is already a done deal. We've already.
Yeah, we already, yeah.
So now we're just approving spending the 17,500
Out of the
that,
$50,000,
too.
yes.
Okay, that's
In
clear.
the form of a contract for the system that the state is requiring us to have.
All right, very good. Then that's much clearer than the way I was
Yeah,
reading it
I
here.
understand
So,
that.
yeah, because it kept giving reference to 50,000, and then
Yeah.
even when I read the detail, I wasn't sure what I was approving. So, okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's a question.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? If not, we'll bring it back to the board.
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We'll move on to a regular agenda. Item 14, Mr. Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, item 14 we have on our agenda is going to be presented to us by Captain Bradley as well as Gil Solario, our executive officer from the Superior Courts. Basically, it's going to be holding a discussion with the board as well as the public with regards to our new courthouse and our security needs for that courthouse. So there's going to be definitely an increase in security compared to our old courthouse where we are occupying about 8,000 to 10,000 square feet, and the new building is going to be approximately 40,000 square feet. So with the new technology that we have in that building, there's going to be added security needs. So I'd like to go ahead and invite both Gil and Captain Bradley. They can.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Solario and Captain Bradley. I guess we'll let you proceed, Gil.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As Mr. Espinosa indicated, my name is Gil Solario for the public. I'm the Executive Officer for the Superior Court, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak before your board on this issue. As your board will recall, I believe in maybe fiscal year 11-12, in the budget process for the state, the legislature enacted several bills that shifted or realigned responsibility for several public safety and health and human services programs from the state to the counties. And in theory, the legislature funded that realignment or that shift by redirecting sales taxes to the counties. As remarks have already indicated, the state's redirection of the sales taxes is insufficient to provide an adequate level of security personnel at the new courthouse. And I want to emphasize we're talking about personnel as opposed to security equipment. And in order to avoid getting marred down in complexities of formulas, et cetera, I'd just like to summarize my segment of this discussion by saying, and I want to emphasize from the court's perspective, that the most effective remedy for our community on this matter is to, or could be, to concurrently pursue two options, two solutions. A short-term temporary funding augmentation, as well as legislation that permanently and adequately increases the state's allocation to this community. And I think for the public's reference, it should be noted that the legislature allocated approximately $500 million for the current fiscal year, specifically for security at trial courts throughout the state. In San Benito County, the sheriff of the county receives approximately $400,000. And while that amount may be sufficient for security at the existing courthouse, it is insufficient for the new courthouse. And that's because the current building lacks holding cells, the current building lacks full entrance screening, and it lacks a command center that controls doors, that controls elevators and other security features that are present in the new building. And I believe, lest anybody forget, or anyone forget rather, that the features that are present in the new building are there because the state conducted an assessment approximately 12 years ago of all court facilities throughout the state. The result of that assessment with regard to the existing courthouse was that they ranked it in immediate need of replacement. And I think an indication of the magnitude of that ranking is that the building that we see across the street, even though the assessment was 12 years ago, is really in the first wave of projects undertaken as a result of that assessment. As I previously mentioned, the court's perspective is that the solution may be to concurrently pursue two options. With regard to the short-term funding augmentation that I mentioned as one of the solutions, the court has been meeting with the sheriff and Captain Bradley, Captain LaMonica, and we have been crunching numbers, and we will continue to do so. Although I can't, if you will, cite a specific number to your board, it's my intent to recommend that the judges authorize an allocation from the court's own general fund to act as temporary funding mechanism in order to open the building. With regard to a long-term permanent solution, it appears probable that legislation will be required, and we all know that that can be a lengthy process. If it turns out that, if you will, our community determines that this is the long-term solution, the court would certainly appreciate the board's endorsement of that process and perhaps collaboration in that process. I'm sure as your board and the administrative staff knows too well, the stakeholders, if you will, in legislation are many, and each holds its own little territory, and in order to get them to the table, it would require a concerted effort on our part to bring that about. So having said that, again, I appreciate the opportunity to present this information to your board. If I can answer any questions at the moment, I will certainly do so, and I will certainly stay for Captain Bradley's segment in case there are questions that I can help with at that point as well.
Would the board like to ask a few questions of Mr. Solario, Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gil, did I hear you say that the court would pay the first part of it, or that they would support the county's effort in paying
in terms of the short term?
Yeah.
The short term, the court is prepared to, if you will, provide our own general fund money, not the county's general fund money, the court's own general fund money as, if you will, a method of providing additional money for additional security personnel.
Okay, so, but will it be enough? Would the county still have to come up with some funds in order to be able to meet that need at this point?
I'll try and answer your question. It's hard and maybe too much information, but the court is going through its own fiscal issues. Right. The legislature determined that as of June 30th, the courts, not just this court, all the courts, can no longer carry reserves. And also that from that point forward, then the amount of money that we have available in the next fiscal year will be very minimal beyond our operating budget. Now, having said that, I am trying to carve out an amount that could, I can't guarantee it, right, be able to carry the next 6 months of additional personnel per our discussions with the sheriff and Captain Bradley in terms of staffing scenarios.
So that short term then would see us through June 30th, is what I'm guessing.
I would hope so. Again, I can't guarantee that.
Right, but let's say that it did.
Okay.
It would only be till June 30th. After June 30th, which I know legislation, as you well know, it's not going to work fast enough for them to give us additional monies, then we will have this, to face this for our fiscal year 14-15 and make sure that we've come up with a solution. Is that?
In theory, that's possible, and so, gosh, in order to give you as much information as possible, I'm trying to figure out if the amount of money that the court can contribute might also be able to go into the next fiscal year to carry the augmentation 6 months, maybe 12 months. So through December 31st, 2014.
Okay, now then it would behoove us then to put this on the agenda, because it sounds to me like there needs to be additional time, work spent on getting this all figured out. So we will need to bring it back to the board then sometime in the very near future once that is done.
I'm available.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz.
Gil, first of all, I'd like to apologize. I didn't return your call. I was so busy, and then when I read your message, the only time available that you and I could have met, and that I still want to take a walk of the facility. So let's make arrangements so that would have been Monday, and Monday was shot for me. So I guess I'm returning your call right now. And right now, I mean, let's move forward so we can. I definitely want to take a walk. Listening to you and the chronological sequence of events, there were some mandates that were put in place that require additional expenditure for security. When everything was moving forward, were these discussions ever brought to the Board of Supervisors that there might be additional security issues? Because I've been on this board for about 9 years, and I don't remember someone coming to the Board of Supervisors and say, "Oh, there's going to be increased security issues, and any increased security issue will be jeopardized depending on where the funds might potentially come." As you know very well, former Supervisor Rebenacco said, "Don't guarantee anything from the state unless the money's actually in our coffers." And so, what mechanism? And I guess the question before that is, when was this brought to the public that it may actually be some funding issues in terms of security?
If I may, in answering your question, I hope I don't go into a little corner, but the funding formula, if you will, which I will say right now to you, I can't recite to you, is essentially lodged within the state's budget process. So it isn't coming directly from the county's general fund. It isn't coming from the court's general fund. It's coming from the legislative process. And that process is basically established as a formula for all the jurisdictions throughout the state, for all the trial courts throughout the state. I think what we're really talking about is an inflexibility within that formula process for this particular type of scenario where 2 or 3 years ago, although the project was in the pipeline, it wasn't known that it would actually come available for operational, to become operational, say in January of 2014. So the formula itself, I don't believe, allows any flexibility for this type of consideration. And in my reference to legislation, it was my intent or my thought that the legislation would either fix the formula for everybody, because there are many other projects, whether they're renovations or new courthouses in the pipeline, whether it fixes the formula in that sense, or whether there is specific relief for the handful of projects that are set to come online in 2014.
Okay. And then my next question, and I guess more of a comment, is that moving forward, if, say, the state just doesn't react or there's just no consensus, and any additional costs will most likely have to be burdened by local taxpayers, shouldn't that, at that time, discussions should arise to consider other options besides what we're doing now? Because I know that I'll be facing a dilemma, we will be facing a dilemma. Do we continue to provide additional boots on the community to protect the community, or transfer those boots and to become to secure the courthouse? And that will be a dilemma or a $64,000 question that we have to discuss down the road if local dollars are needed to transfer, because we all of us, the entire community does not want that courthouse not to be open. We definitely want it open.
I appreciate that. In fact, sorry, I don't want to necessarily preempt, but in terms of my familiarity with the county agency, I'm aware of the South County issues with regard to law enforcement. And so I believe that adds to, if you will, the dilemma if the board were to be asked to contribute funds for this matter. I don't know that it's any, again, a guarantee of any sort, any consolation, but just yesterday I was invited to join a conference call on Friday with the Judicial Council on this matter, specific matter. So, if you will, legislation may be an option. However, there are forces, if you will, moving parallel to the legislature that are recognizing that this is an issue. And I guess in general, I'm suggesting, again, no guarantees, that perhaps a solution may be forming as we speak, and where perhaps I'll be coming back to say, well, there's a temporary solution in place from the Judicial Council, or the Judicial Council is going to work with CSAC to see if we can get legislation sponsored. I don't know. But I don't want to, and I'm sorry, I didn't want to leave you with the impression that the legislation, although I think it is the long-term solution, that it has to come from the grassroots up. I believe there may be other agencies already looking at this, recognizing, as I mentioned, that there are several projects in the pipeline ready to go online in 2014. And when you have jurisdictions such as San Bernardino, San Diego, where their buildings are 8 stories tall and 40 courtrooms in the building, you can imagine that politically that will also become, if not already recognized in those communities, it will become an issue as well.
Thank you, Gil. I do appreciate it.
Okay, I'll go to Supervisor Munzer and then you, Supervisor Rivas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gil, I too want to thank you for taking the time, giving a tour of the building so that we could understand the issues better that we're faced with over there. And I want to thank you for your understanding and appreciation of the issue that Supervisor De La Cruz brought up about the perception that if we spend all of our money for the Sheriff's Department and then instead of putting boots on the pavement, we put them in that building, that's not going to be well perceived by the community. South County, as I think probably most of the unincorporated areas, are underfunded for not only law enforcement but also fire protection. You know, our public services we have issues with it, and if we take this, or if we end up having to take $500,000 a year from general fund to provide security for that building, that I'm not sure that's going to look right. What I do want to say is I don't want to end up looking like this. We're invitational here. We want to work together. We appreciate your effort in coming to us with solutions, and I think I can say for the whole board, we want to work with you and resolve this. And even though we might get frustrated with the process, we might have to take it out on you because you're the face in front of us, we do want you to know that we do want to work with you, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rivas.
I as well, Gil, I want to thank you for that tour that we had, because it helped me understand and realize that right there across the street we have a state-of-the-art building. And I'm not worried about perception. Boots on the ground means nothing to me. I'm concerned about reality. And reality is we have a fiscal problem. We have a fiscal problem in San Benito County, and we have a fiscal problem in this state. And when we start talking about, you know, some legislative relief, I don't think it's, you know, I think it's, you know, I'm less than optimistic that we're going to get legislative relief because of what Gil just told us about San Diego. I mean, we're an afterthought in Sacramento. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, I worked for 2 legislators. San Benito County is an afterthought in Sacramento. So we're fooling ourselves if we're going to hang our hat on getting some legislative relief immediately. It's a long-term solution. I think that what we're confronted with here is a temporary solution from the courts, which is, you know, is something that we need to take advantage of. But at the same time, I think that we also need a long-term plan. You know, we have problems in this county. We're going to have problems. We're going to have a deficit this year. We all know that. But how are we going to address that? That's the big question. But when I look at that building, when I took a tour of this building, it's state-of-the-art building, this is, in my opinion, the first step towards a downtown revitalization, towards an effort to improve not only Hollister or San Benito County, but our community. This is an opportunity to change San Benito County because we have plans to reorganize and to shift some departments into these buildings. And we need this to happen. We need this to happen soon because the only way we're going to improve our fiscal position is by projects such as this. And so you know, we can't afford to have a delay in opening this facility because it means so much to our community. It means so much to our law enforcement. And unfortunately, as a board, we have to make, again, June's going to come around. We're going to have some difficult decisions to make, very difficult decisions. We all know that. This is going to be a difficult budget year. but we need to start now in trying to figure out what our long-term plan is. You know, we're lucky that the courts are stepping up and saying, hey, we can offer a temporary solution. We need to take advantage of this, but we need to do our part, whether we do it through intergovernmental, our committee, whether we talk to the city council and say, hey, you guys have adopted some ridiculous resolution that we're not going to have any type of discussion of a consolidation. We need to have that discussion because it's not about the city, it's not about the county, it's about our community. And we need to do what's best for the interest of our taxpayers, not our jurisdictions. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at it as a fiscal problem for us that, you know, we're being informed that we may have to make an augmentation for this year that we did not anticipate for a significant amount of money. I mean, it's a lot of money, and we've been asking our employees to take it on the chin for the last several years, and they have. We've had layoffs. We have minimal services in all departments, and what I'm looking at is $1 million for the next 2 years only. And I'm really upset about this issue. And you know, I appreciate working, you know, with the discussions I've had with the courts, and I don't think they are very comfortable in putting us in this predicament themselves, and wish there was some other alternatives that we could go and paths that we could go down. But this is the reality, and I'm getting a sense from this board, and any of you could correct me if I'm wrong, that we're a rollover for the state once again. We took it on the shorts on the ERAF, and a significant amount of money, and now we're due this for the courts, that if this project, as Gil's mentioned, was completed 2 years ago, we wouldn't be here right now. Morgan Hill has a brand new spanking courthouse. I'm sure Santa Clara is getting full reimbursement for that, for security. Or at least it's not to the percentage of what we have in front of us right now. If any of our departments came in and they had a shortfall of this amount of money and going forward, that would be a firing offense. You know, you just can't have. You just can't have that. And I want the courthouse open as soon as possible. I was one of the strongest advocates to have it across the street because of the revitalization of downtown. Could we have built a $25 million courthouse and had court security for the next 20 years? Maybe, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that what kind of message can we generate as a community and as a county government that has to meet these state mandates that was very well outlined in our staff report to the state, that we need some legislative relief, at least for a portion of this, going forward. We open that courthouse on schedule, I guarantee you we're not going to get anything. We're going to have our library continue to suffer. We're going to continue to suffer with our patrols out in the rural areas, and it is a big problem. I have to answer to my constituents why it takes 40 minutes before a deputy could even show up, if they show up. And that's not acceptable. I think we absolutely need to send some sort of message, if it's even a delay in opening this courthouse. It will cost the local economy absolutely nothing because we're still operating. The courts are still able to function. Everything's going the way it's been going for the last 50 years. And then in the meantime, we develop a strategy working with other counties that are affected by this, San Diego and Calaveras, to name the couple that I'm familiar with, work with our state legislators to get the legislative relief through our, state lobbying association, CSAC, RCRC, name a couple, and develop a plan where if we start funding court security, we could see light at the end of the tunnel that this is not going to be a permanent issue for us. But I guarantee you, if we just open it, just because we, we like Mr. Solario or Judge Sanders, they're good people, and I would want to move into the new facility too. We're in deep trouble, and probably this is not an issue we should decide today in any case. What we need is to have other options and see the numbers laid out in front of us. I saw a couple of scenarios that the sheriff and Captain Bradley, and maybe in a minute he could get up and describe a few of the ideas he has for staffing. But we're talking about $1 million in 2 years. Everything we've done to try to minimize and cut, make the revenue match with our expenses work have been completely thrown out the window. And don't forget, we know that the cost for the new jail is going to go up. We're going to start that project soon, and that's going to require more staffing. And, that's the next problem. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, don't get me wrong. I think the judges are great people. I think Gil's a great person. And my decision isn't because I want them to move into a new facility. My decision is based on safety. This is a state-of-the-art facility that offers our personnel the opportunity to work in a safe environment, as opposed to the facility we have here, which is extremely unsafe. There's no holding cells. We're one step away from something happening as far as you have these inmates that, since they don't have the holding cells, they're just sitting in, the courtrooms, all, in shackles or, however they do it. And it's just not a safe environment. Here, this is a facility that offers our personnel, our community, safety, and they can go to a courthouse that has the specific security measures that we've lacked here for a number of years. That is, aside from, I believe, what could be the economic impacts to opening the courthouse, that is why I believe a delay is a mistake. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
If I can, and this is respectfully submitted, and for the publics and not the boards, but just for context, if you will, there are government codes that, I'll be careful, that are interpreted to say that the sheriff is mandated to provide security at a court facility. There may be varying degrees, but for the public's sake, I wanted to make that mention. And that doesn't help your board, I'm sorry, I realize that, because basically the pie is only so big. And if your board were to consider any kind of contribution, I'm sure that would just stress the fiscal picture even more than what it is right now. But as I mentioned, within the 6 months, for the next 6 months, we're trying to figure out the court in terms of a contribution to augment the existing allocation, and if possible, beyond that, to 12 months, say, 18 months. That would require cutbacks on our side, and that's all well and good. And I'm sorry, I don't want that present that as some sort of reverse obligation to the board. It's just simply stating this is where the court is at and what we're thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's anything else.
Mr. Chair, both you and Supervisor Rivas make excellent points, and they're both very, very valid. I think what we probably need to do, first of all, we're not going to make a decision today because it appears that the courts and our sheriff still need to come together and figure out and continue to find some solutions, work together, lower the cost, whatever that may be. But in the meantime, we need to be proactive. We need to jump into the wagon with the big counties. Did you say San Bernardino?
Yes.
And San Diego?
Yes.
Calaveras. Calaveras already has the ball rolling. They're already complaining to the state. The state has already heard them through CSAC, through, I believe, RCRC, through letters, through their legislators, their representatives. So that is already there. So why don't we write a letter and say that we're considering delaying the opening of our courthouse for these reasons, have that letter go to the state immediately. And in the meantime, we're working on a plan. We don't need to tell them that because we don't know what the plan is. And contact the other counties and say, let's get together and together make us even stronger. So I think that's a proactive approach we need to take.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Captain Bradley, you want to state where you're coming from on this project?
Good morning to the board.
Good morning.
Some of this is going to be redundant. My name's Don Bradley, and I'm here to represent Sheriff Darren Thompson, who's on a well-deserved vacation. Court security falls under my purview in the Sheriff's Office. I'm the captain in charge of administration. Captain LaMonica is the operations captain, and we work together on a lot of these issues. Basically, I'm here today to provide information regarding Sheriff's codified responsibility regarding court operations. I'm also here to inform you of an impending shortfall of staffing and funding as it relates to running the new court building that we expect will be ready to open soon. You've already heard that. I prepared an attachment for today's board meeting, and I hope you got to read it. In case you didn't, I'm going to summarize some of the codified responsibilities that the sheriff does have for the courts, which are contained in the government code sections. The sheriff is responsible for the necessary level of court security services in court. The sheriff and the courts are responsible for establishing a memorandum of understanding. The MOU requires approval and authorization of your board and allows the sheriff on behalf of the county to enter into an annual or multi-year memorandum of understanding with the Superior Court specifying an agreed-upon level of court security services and any other agreed-upon level of governing or operational procedures. Generally, these services include bailiffs who sit in the court with the judges when the courts are in session. We also take charge of juries who are deliberating. We patrol the hallways and other areas within the court facilities. We oversee the escorting of prisoners in holding cells within the court facilities. We provide security screening within the court facilities, and we provide enhanced security for judicial officers and other court personnel. Currently, the agreement between the courts and the sheriff is contained in a guideline. The guidelines call out the services of 2 deputy sheriffs who are bailiffs currently, and 1 correctional deputy who provides security screening. In the circumstances where there's a 3rd court that's needed, overtime pays for a 3rd deputy sheriff. Sheriff receives approximately $399,000 annually directly from the State Department of Finance, and these fees, or the amount that we receive currently, covers our operational expenses in the current court facility. Since court security funding is tied directly to sales tax, there are few indications that an augmentation for funding will occur within the next few months or in the short term. We have disclosed our shortfall to the state via a survey that we fill out every year for court security. Their projected increases are not sufficient to address our projected shortfalls. There will continue to be challenges facing counties to match services required to the funding available. Some counties have subsidized court security funding and provided services that have exceeded the funding available. During realignment of trial court security funding, little attention was paid to the change of security services as a result of the opening of new, larger court facilities. For example, in Calaveras County, staffing at the new courthouse is expected to exceed court security funding by $380,000. In San Benito County, we're experiencing a similar scenario but are studying options to mitigate the bottom line deficit. Our new court building will require more security-related positions to run a much larger and potentially more secure facility. Our current court facility is approximately 11,000 square feet, and the new facility, as mentioned, is about 41,000 square feet. The new facility has 2 metal detectors and an X-ray machine. All visitors, including employees, will be security screened prior to entry into the facility. We refer to this as single-point entry, and it's a tried and true method of providing building security. And many of you have seen this at airports with TSA. Currently, this screening does not occur on a systematic basis. We only operate 1 metal detector, and frankly, the 2nd metal detector, we don't have anybody to operate. Basically, in the new building, court services are consolidated into one-stop shopping in a new facility versus the current scheme of multiple locations with little security. The new facility has a control room which monitors all security electronics and controls movement in all secure locations of the new building. The new facility really is a combination of a court facility and a jail. There are multiple holding rooms in a secure portion of the building. Inmates will arrive in a secure celly port and will be taken to a holding cell where they will await their visit to the courtroom. When it's their turn, the inmates will be moved via elevator to the second floor where again they'll either be in a holding cell or they'll go directly into the court. Most of this movement is escorted movement and will require an officer to do. In summary, the new building is more complex, more sophisticated, more work intensive, and therefore potentially more safe than the existing courthouse for the public, our justice partners, law enforcement, court staff, and yes, also the inmates. However, comprehensive security in the new courthouse is attainable only if staffed and supervised correctly. Additional workstations not currently in existence have been added to this facility to include X-ray, central control, holding cells, and elevators needed for inmate movement. It is the sheriff's assessment that several more positions need to be added to the court security plan to adequately staff this building. Our current funding levels from the state are adequate for current operations but quickly run deficits when a new staffing plan is applied to the new building. We are not the only county in this situation, as you've already heard, and we're monitoring the progress of others. To date, the State Department of Finance is not promising or considering additional assistance that we know of. We believe the funding formula for court security is flawed and needs correction. We are monitoring any information that becomes available from CSAC and the California State Sheriff's Association, who are championing this cause. We feel that we are at a crossroads with this issue locally long before a resolution will come at the state level. I would like to mention that the new court building would be a welcome addition to our current business practices and is a beautiful modern facility. Hopefully we can find a short-term solution to move forward. This respectfully concludes my report, and I would address any questions that you have.
Any questions for the captain? I have one. Supervisor Rivas pointed out, and he's right, the new facility would be a lot safer for the public, a lot more safer managing, the prisoners coming and going and witnesses and the judges and so forth. There's no question about it. Our facility, one of the biggest reasons why we got approved for that is because of the conditions of this present courthouse. That was a big reason why we got this. Now, if by some miracle, well, it won't be a miracle. There's no miracles in managing money. You either have it or you don't. And in our case, what we would have to do is adjust other departments and programs that our general fund manages and shift, the needed revenue for court security for the next, foreseeable future. How comfortable is the sheriff's office with the situation that they have in the field with the lack of, patrols and backup, and in the jail that we are severely understaffed as well? How do you guys have any ideas how we should be resolving some of these issues? Because the way I see it, we go forward and, do what's in front of us right now. The situation we have today is to continue for the foreseeable future as far as I could see.
Yeah, I have probably about 30 years of experience in working with sheriff's offices. I've never worked for one that didn't experience unfunded mandates. Your staffing in this county is extremely thin all the way around. We're willing to look at every conceivable option to address bottom line deficits and provide more service in the field, in the jail, and in the courts. It always boils down to money, and some of the things that we're looking at in the court are what I would consider minimum staffing options, and if we have the right people in there, we can probably make it work. But I don't have any easy solutions for you. You stated the problem very eloquently. There's always more need than there is money.
If the Board of Supervisors say, well, we're not a budget the full amount that's being required for staffing, and you know, the conversations I had with the sheriff on this issue, he made it very clear that he feels that this is state mandate. Would we be jeopardizing some other programs or patrols in the field or services that run through the sheriff's office that is not a state mandate if we don't fund the full amount?
Potentially. We do everything to avoid pulling somebody out of the field to run courts. Courts is a mandate for the sheriff. The sheriff has many mandates. We're pretty used to juggling a lot of balls at the same time and reading the need and adapting and overcoming. That being said, there's always a potential that we will overrun our budget, which, you know, we want to be fiscally prudent and we want to be fiscally responsible. When push comes to shove in emergency situations, we call people in on overtime, and there's probably some staffing options that we need to explore in this county that we haven't availed ourselves of at this point.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Supervisor Munzer?
This might be a question for Gil. Wasn't there subcommittee a couple years ago in which the Board of Supervisors were involved, kind of discussing the courthouse and the application or the process of getting approval of the courthouse? Are you familiar with what
I'm sorry, I'm looking puzzled because there's just been, I'm sure there was, I just don't recall any specific.
Okay,
one.
And I could be wrong, because right after I got elected, I remember some kind of subcommittee I thought was out there. I guess where I'm going with this is I kind of feel that, yes, the sheriff and the courts have been in discussions with this. I feel that this board has not been part of that discussion, and to some degree, we've gotten blindsided by this shortfall. And I'm just wondering if we can be a part of any future discussions that go forward with coming up with a solution to this, whether it requires us forming a subcommittee or just becoming part of the group that's meeting. But I think we need to be at the table talking about this in some form. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Well, I think Supervisor Munzer kind of said it, but let me just add a little bit more to it. And I do appreciate that you're considering other staffing options. Because for me, just listening to you and analyzing what you're saying, overtime becomes an issue for me right off the bat. I just can imagine the future overtime we're going to accrue. So by default, it might actually be cheaper to hire a new person than to actually give more overtime to someone. And I know there's other options too. I know not all 58 counties have sheriffs that provide security to the courthouse. There are companies out there that do provide options. So everything on the table should be discussed, especially now that we're talking about, you know, some big dollars, and hopefully you would allow the Board of Supervisors those type of discussions, because I know the fine line. Our good sheriff, he controls our protection, our services to our community, but the board has the string attached to the budget, and we got to work together. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll open it, if there's no further questions or discussions from the board, I'll open it up for public comment. Mr. Richmond wants to come up and...
Marty Richmond from Hollister. Captain Bradley should be running for office the way he analyzes budgets and requirements. I think that was excellent presentation. Thank you. Let me perhaps put forward a possible help and solution. I think all the issues are covered by what was said by the board. That's my opinion. But for solving, to try to solve something, you know, I supported the courthouse downtown because I feel that the justice system needs to be where the people are. That's why I didn't want it out where the jail was. Had nothing to do with, it's good that the Fremont School and the condition is gone, and it's good. It's good for the economics. I agree with you. But the real reason is the justice system is basically the foundation of the way we run our society, and so it needed to be where the people are. And so for that reason also, and all the other reasons you talked about, I think we do need to open the courthouse. Closing the courthouse is a message to society, and it's a message we don't want to send. The problem you have is how you're going to fund it. I also agree with Supervisor Rivas about the fact that we can't seem to make any headway for political reasons, just like you have your political reasons on consolidation. But maybe we can make some headway with some money. Why don't we, in addition to all the other ideas you have, is ask the city to help fund the security of the courthouse? I understand they have their own problems, but they have in place their Measure E. They have a 1% sales tax in place. They don't have to wait for the next election, or they don't have to wait for the thing to turn over. And obviously, this is no reflection on the people, but the majority of the people live in the city, so the majority of the people who use the courthouse or for one reason or another are going to be city residents. It's just the way it works out. I understand they don't have the responsibility legally or funding-wise, but you know what? We're all in this together. That courthouse is sitting in the middle, essentially, of the city, and it is going to be a great economic boom, and it is going to be a safety issue. I guarantee you, and I'm certainly not wishing for anybody to prove what I'm about to say. If we have one problem over there that's serious, $200,000 or $1 million is going to look like peanuts. Peanuts. You'll run up $1 million in lawyers' fees over who's responsible in 15 minutes, even though lawyers are a dime a dozen. We know that. So let's not take this chance. I'll wrap up. I appreciate a few extra seconds. Let's not take that chance. Let's be safe. Unfortunately, we live in a society where a lot of people are angry, and the courthouses are areas where these people come together, and a lot of them want to take it out on society and on each other. And we should not take that risk. It's not worth it. So I hope you will go to the city and ask them to help you along until we can put the heat on the legislature to bail us out on a permanent basis. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? If not, I'll bring it back to the board. And like I said, I don't think we're going to be able to solve anything right now. We don't have any action to move forward with. But I did like Supervisor Barrios' suggestion as far as maybe the first initial steps. And also, if we could maybe bring this item back in, not the next meeting, but the following meeting, just as for an update as far as the changing of a situation, maybe some staffing options that might be what's being considered by the sheriff's office, and then maybe we could kind of go from there. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does. Mr. Chair, could we at this time go ahead and direct that we discuss this at intergovernmental? That's been brought up by a few people, including Supervisor Rivas. I think that's a good place for it, and they may have some ideas that we haven't thought about. And then get that letter written. I would like to direct through you, Mr. Chair, to have, I believe Matt has a letter that Calaveras has sent to the state, and we could use that as a model, yeah, so that we can write our own letter and be very firm about what we're considering doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Espinoza?
Yes, we can go ahead and write that letter up, and we could bring it back on the December 19th meeting for your approval on that letter, or we can go ahead and write that letter and send it off. It's up to the board.
Any concluding thoughts, Captain Bradley or Mr. Solario?
Just that I'll keep the board informed. I just think that there are several irons in the fire now, and Supervisor Botello, I think your comment about closing the building has already made its way up to the Judicial Council, or not wanting to open the building. And so that is perhaps maybe one of the reasons why there's a conference call on Friday. So in terms of movement, I'm somewhat optimistic something is going to be happening here. Now, whether or not it completely resolves the issue, I don't know, but I'm somewhat optimistic from that point, and I'll be glad to come back to your board and report on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to see that letter come back to us on the first meeting in December, even if we're not making any other decisions, but approving the letter and sending it out sooner than later.
That sounds like a good idea.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
okay, we can have the letter ready for our first meeting in September, and then we'll just kind of bring this as we need to make decisions by the board. Thank you. Thank you very much for a very good report. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have item number 15 on our agenda. This item was also requested by your board. We're going to be receiving a full report from our Fire Chief, Mike O'Connor. And he's going to be discussing with your board calls, the different calls that we're receiving within our county, where they're located. Also, a station update for you. And he has a map here for your viewing.
Okay, thank you.
This is Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I'm just going to cover this real quick so we can get it out of the way. This is a map showing actually the call volume. It's just basically a refresher of what we mapped out when we started the consolidation of the organizations. We looked at where stations should be placed, where call volume is going. It's going exactly as forecast. We're having a high volume of calls in the north San Juan area, as well as the calls that have always been happening in the city of Hollister. Still few calls to the south. Not that they're not significant calls, they are. Those people, are calling us 911, they need their help. We are responding to it, but there's still just a small volume of calls to the south of Piscinas. If you have any questions about that, I'll answer it right now while it's up.
Can we have a smaller version of that, maybe put in our boxes, just so?
Yes, I can. It's when it gets small, it gets really hard to see the numbers, but yes, it's even hard to see that way.
Okay, good. Any questions on the board?
And I'll leave this here so you guys can come over and take a look at it after the meeting.
They're doing a good job, Mr. Chair. I've been hearing nothing but good stuff. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
I'll move this out of the way and then I'll get to the other items.
Actually, I do have a question, Mr. Chair. What's the average response time? Has that decreased?
To a lot of the county, yes. To the city, it hasn't really changed. I can't, it has probably increased a little bit in the South County, just because we're trying to figure out sometimes where some of these streets and addresses are that don't seem to be well marked down there. And maybe the agency that had a lot of experience responding down there may have had a better knowledge of that spill, but we are learning the curve, using the phone devices, mapping. We're coming, up to speed very quickly. But it's not a significant amount of change in time in South County. But everywhere else, yes, it has improved. To probably 90% of the calls, it has improved. We are working with the Department of ISO, which is the insurance agent, to have us reevaluated for the county to see that there is better protection and try to get the insurance ratings lowered for the county-wide insurance people that have insurance. Okay, that's other than what I was planning to cover. Your water tender that had been sent off last month for repair is back. It's working very well. A lot of the repairs were made. It's functioning up to a 16-year-old water tender, but it's functioning really well. I don't think we'll have any major repairs unless there's something we haven't forecast on it, or the repair shop that we sent it to didn't see. They gave it a good bill of health. So it should be doing good there. On another note, South Santa Clara Fire District has signed a auto aid agreement with us for the North County. That basically means that they'll be responding in automatically on the dispatch to all the north area of county, from Fallon north, all the 25 corridor from 156 north. They'll be responding in to assist us. We will still be responding, as a engine in a rescue to vehicle accidents, an engine and another engine for fires. It's just additional resources to assist us in protecting that, and also getting the closest engine to the scene. There's some areas that they can get into probably faster than we can. So just trying to get the best coverage for the people. Any questions on that?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. I read the entire agreement, and I have to say it's very well planned, very well thought out. It's very specific as to the areas that are going to be covered, who has jurisdiction, who does not, who's going to be called off, and at what point. I really appreciate you reaching out and getting us this extra assistance that'll be so valuable if needed. Yeah. And so I want to thank you for that effort, and I think it's going to serve us
4 months worth of work.
really well. And I know that there was a committee. I don't want to ignore that.
They were pushing very hard. Let's get this done.
I want to thank our committee. I'm going into a meeting. Supervisor Munzer's coming out, and I know that the fire committee gets together often and moves in the direction that we wanted you to move. So thank you for your efforts.
They pushed pretty hard.
Yes, they have.
A couple of poker games work out some of the details didn't hurt either.
I knew there was something behind the scenes that made this happen so quickly, but it's great. Thank you.
On another note, Station 3, we're still moving forward on that. We're still looking at all 3 options. We're trying to find the best option, the most financially wise option to go. We don't have a lot of money in the fire impact fees in either organization to cover probably a new building, but if we can do it fiscally sound, then we will. Otherwise, we'll look at other options that we have, and I'll work with the fire committee to work those out and then bring you guys all 3 options, but bring you the one that we think is the best to go forward on. And that should be hopefully in not December. I think we canceled the meeting for December. It'll probably be January. The first week of January, I have a meeting with the committee. So another note, we just started a program for the youth of Hollister and San Miguel County. It's the Explorer Post. These is a program for the youth to explore the field of fire science. Any youth from 14 to 21 that's interested in being in the fire service can explore the field, join the organization. It's a Boy Scout ran organization, but it's overseen by the Hollister Fire Department, and we have coordinators in the fire department that will be training them and teaching the fire science program that the Boy Scouts has established, and hopefully developing some youth into the fire service over the next couple of years. And that's pretty much all I have for the board, unless they have some other direction or things that they'd like to know about.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Chief, it's always good to see you.
Thank you.
I always have kind of like a standing question as far as to get an update on the status of our volunteers, the paid call.
Okay.
I may have missed it. I may have missed it if you mentioned it when I stepped out. But what are the current numbers? And
we're at 52. We've just cleared additional 13 through the background and medical. On the 30th of November, I have an additional interview with 15 more candidates that will be doing orals, and then they'll start through their medical backgrounds and their medicals and their background checks at that time. Hopefully, they'll be on by January, and we're accepting applications continuously, and we're getting about every month, every 2 months, we're getting about 15 applications. So,
and then as far as I may have missed this as well, but you know, since we had this this merger or a consolidation, Has the department been applying for additional grant monies, or how's that coming along?
Yes, we have. We received a grant that the Hollister City had applied for SCBAs, for breathing apparatuses. Because of the consolidation, the breathing apparatuses we carry in the city of Hollister is not the ones we're going to be purchasing. We're actually purchasing the county breathing apparatuses. They're MSAs brand. We're trying to come down to one. San Juan had their own type, not compatible with the city of Hollister. San Juan and San Miguel County had ones that weren't completely compatible with the city of Hollister. So we have 3 sets right now in the organization. We're trying to get it down to one type, and that's going to be the MSA brand. So we use that money, the grant money of the city of Hollister, to start that weeding out the other brands and bringing about a cohesive group of breathing apparatuses in the department. We also just applied for the SAFER grant. In August, I applied for that, and right now I understand we're in the final selection of that grant. That will be for additional 12 personnel in our department that will be funded for 2 years, and it has an option to be extended for 2 years if we reapply for it. So if that happens, it's only temporary personnel. It's just to help, and it's pretty much no funding by any organization. There's not a portion to kick into it. We just pay for the grant writer to oversee the grant. That's it. So.
And then my last question is related to equipment needs as far as engines and whatnot. How is that working? And if you anticipate any type of need in the future?
Yes. We lack really a wildland equipment. We have a Type 3. We have all of our engines, a couple of our engines are pump and roll capability, but as far as maneuverability and into the brush and stuff like that, especially going up into the off-road park and trying to get something, catch something quick. We can get in there quicker than CAL FIRE right now in some of those areas, but we don't have the apparatus that really you want to take off-road on a regular basis to do that. So yes, we're probably coming back and asking for some additional funds for Type 4s or Type 6s. If we can get them through grants, we will. I did apply for some additional grants for more breathing apparatus, more personal protective equipment, because we have another issue on our turnouts and stuff like that. And if I can get this money through grants, we won't be funding it through our general fund budgets.
Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, I just want to make sure,
Right.
just to clarify that Hollister Hills and most of the rougher terrain grassland area is in the state responsibility
Correct.
area.
Yeah.
So when you say you need equipment for it, it's to assist.
Correct.
CAL
It's a
FIRE.
system, but if we can, you're right.
I just want to make sure
Right.
the public is
Right.
aware
We
that
assist
the-
them.
the
Right.
equipment that's out there through CAL FIRE to
Right.
take care of those areas. You're seeking equipment to assist them.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. But if we can assist them to catch that fire quick before it spreads to structures or other things, it assists us a lot quick.
Yes.
Better
okay.
job of doing the job.
I just want to make sure the public didn't come away thinking that the equipment wasn't there.
No, CAL FIRE is still
Yeah.
there and will be
Yes.
there for years to come.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Espinosa?
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to add to the board is during the fire committee and meeting with Michael O'Connor, one of the things with the consolidation buys us is us being in the final selection when we're applying for grants. I mean, in the past, it's a little bit difficult when the organizations are kind of spread out, but now that we're consolidated, it gives us more opportunities to receive grant funding.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been at this really 6 months. It might be a little less, and I think the progress that we've made has been phenomenal. Of course, there's been little bumps in the road, but that
Yes,
wasn't
yes.
not to be expected. Is it too soon to ask how you're doing with your budget?
I'm preparing right now a mid-year, trying to get ready for a mid-year budget analysis for the city of Hollister. So in January, we're supposed to go to mid-year. and forecast. Right now, overall, I would say we're right on the number for the city's budget. But overtime did shoot up during the month of August because of the hiccup we had with personnel. And it is still forecasting high because of that, but it hasn't shot up any, since then. It's staying pretty well what we forecast each month would be after that peak.
Because there's probably a little cost savings because we haven't really got the North County station staffed or equipped yet. But the only thing that I think the fire committee would.
Well, North County Station is staffed. We have an engine company running to those calls separate.
Oh yeah, you have it running to the calls, but I
It's
mean
just not
another
up there. It's not at that
Station
facility.
3.
Right. It's not at a facility up there. Station. Right.
And we want to be as aggressive as we can, get that done, and as well as start exploring, the South County needs as well.
Yes.
And kind of keep moving forward.
Yes.
So, okay. Any other questions? Any comments from the public? Seeing none. Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
Break. We'll take a 10-minute break right now. Thank you.
Is this revised, Mr. Chair? Did he say the new budget? Because we got him in Is this revised, did he say, or just a copy? Oh, just a copy that we can look at it. Okay, but it's not, there are some changes? Yeah. You will explain. Okay, super. Thank you. On which one? Oh, the CSAs. Oh, but those are not monies per se. They, okay.
Okay, if we could reconvene, and we're on the next item. CEO Espinosa, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this particular item, we're at 16. We're going to be discussing with your board our financial status for the first quarter fiscal year 13-14, as well as our fiscal year 12-13 fourth quarter report. So we have Melinda Casillas here, our management analyst and administration. She's going to be presenting to you the information for your review and discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Melinda.
Okay. Good morning, Board.
Morning.
Like Ray said, per your request, we're bringing the fourth quarter fiscal year 12-13 final revenue and expenditure information to you, and then also the first quarter of fiscal year 13-14. A couple of notes that I wanted to say before we got started is I handed out, you just received 3 sheets of papers. I made a couple of changes that I noticed that after we had turned in the board packet, and I'll explain those changes as we get to those pages. And then I wanted to, what I thought I would do is I would quickly go over totals for the fourth quarter, and then we could go back and any specific questions that you have on a department or a program or a fund, we could go back and discuss those after we talk about the totals, if that works okay. Okay, so to begin with, on the fourth quarter fiscal year 12-13, if you go to page 292, I believe it is in your packet, it has the total general fund, where the expenses, you'll see at the bottom of the page, the expenses were a total of $28,857,324. That represents 99% of the total budget for the year. And then the revenues came in at $29,619,118, and that represents 106% above what you budgeted for the fiscal year. On the following page, which would be, I handed out a correction on this page, would be page 293 in your budget packet, and then I handed out the corrected one. I accidentally switched the revenue and the expenditure information, so this is correct. This is the revenue in the correct column and the expenditures in the correct column. And then I also removed the capital projects to the bottom of the page. I felt they were a little distorted to have them in with the other funds, so I removed them to the bottom so that they were kind of separate by themselves. So that makes all the other funds expenditure totals $832,049, and that represents 91% of the budgeted expenses. And then the revenue came in at $35,480,758, which represents 91% of the budget. And then the the road projects came in at $3,515,547, which represented 8% of the total budgeted. The total budgeted was for the total cost of the projects, not necessarily what Public Works was going to be able to get accomplished during the year. And then also on the revenues came in at $1,830,000, $830,497, and that represents about 4% of the total budget. The same thing with capital outlay. Those are budgeted at 100% of the cost, not necessarily what was able to be accomplished during the year. So the total expenses for that year were $1,614,173, which represents 18% of the total budget. And then the revenue came in at $1,517,713, which represents approximately 16% of the total budget. And moving on to the final page of the fourth quarter budget, these are the county service areas, and you can see the activity for each of the, oh, did I miss one? I'm sorry, I apologize. I missed page 294. These are the capital projects and the road projects in detail of each project. And then on the following page, the CSAs represent the expenses and revenues, and you can also see that those are by specific CSAs. So that's kind of just a quick overview of the totals. So if you want to go back and visit any specific department or program, project, fund, I'd be happy to discuss those.
Yeah, sure. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you. Joe, excuse me. These are unaudited final numbers, right?
Correct.
We still need the auditor to come in, and so the carryover will change, right, within a couple months or so?
Good morning, Chair, Board of Supervisors, Joe Paul Gonzalez, County Auditor. Your question, Supervisor De La Cruz, is that are these amounts expected to change? Not significantly. There'll be some, minor adjustments that my assistant is working on now.
Okay, perfect, good. Okay. And then on the, Mr. Chair, on the capital, there's a difference of total expended versus total revenue. I would assume that they'll both will equal, and one of the differences that I can see is the Resource Recovery Park. There was a charge of $14.98. Is that because you're going to have some interdepartment transfers or some type of other funds coming in to offset the differences in this capital outlay budget?
I think I should let Melinda answer that question.
I'm sorry, on the Resource Recovery Park?
Yeah.
What page are you looking at?
Yeah, well, let me see, 294 on the spreadsheet, on our internet website, and then the second sheet on the report that you gave us. The capital projects detail.
Oh, for the capital project, okay. The Resource Recovery Park?
Yeah, well, actually, that one and the farm workers housing, I'm just looking at differences between the actual expenditures and actual revenues. Because I would imagine that has to match, right, the expenditures and the revenues.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Those are budgeted.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, on page 294.
And there was very little, money spent on.
Yeah. So if you look at the left, the expenditure, budget expenditures is some 1.1 million.
Right.
The actual expended was only $1,498 out of that. So that's what that was. So there wasn't that much spent, but we allocated or budgeted quite a bit.
Maybe a fair question on a project like that, it just rolls over into the next year.
It rolls over,
Right,
exactly.
right.
Yeah, on the resource recovery park, it's a very minor expenditure. It was budgeted and it'll roll over. On the farm worker housing situation, that one, it's the same scenario. However, we are expecting reimbursement from the state. It just didn't get into these books before they closed. So it's a longer process to get those monies back. So next quarter, you'll see that revenue going up. And
Okay, I guess that's my question right there, because they should match.
it should be very close to matching, or that would be
Expenditures
the
should match
county's share of that contribution. It was coming from someone else.
Right.
But in that particular project, that is 100% funded, and that will match at the end of the day.
Yeah, because once we approved the budget back in last year, we approved it with different sources of fundings, and any expenditures will come out of those sources. So, again, I mean, not to sound like a broken record, they have to match.
Yeah, at the end of the day, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
If I could just add to that, that is one of the things that is being worked on right now, is to be able to match those revenues to the expenditures. So this will look significantly different once the CAFR is created. You'll see those expenses will have revenues that match those expenses.
And that wouldn't have much of an effect on the carryover, right? Because it's it wouldn't have much of an effect on the carryover. Not that adjustment.
Not for, especially not in capital.
Yeah.
I did want to say that if you go back to the general fund information, there are, if you see departments that are over in their expenditures, the majority of that had to do with staffing issues, payoffs for retirements and layoffs, some legal expenses, and then also because there were so many layoffs and resignations, retirements, that kind of thing this year, when a person that is laid off retires and is tied to a specific project or program, and they're not there to provide that support to another department, then the expenses are not, they get captured in that department, so that makes the expenses a little bit higher in that department. And that's where the majority of the overages occurred.
Okay.
Any
So one other
specific
thing I'd
questions?
like to add is on page 292, when you look at the total general fund, you have the 99% budget expenditures, and then you have your percentage of total budget, 106. So again, we were in the good with regards to that. And we were pretty much tracking with, overall, when you look at a macro level on the budget side of things, we had some fluctuation within the units itself, but overall, we're tracking. So now that was the fourth quarter of last year. Did you want to continue on with the first quarter if there was no other questions?
Actually, yes, Mr. Chair, I can't point, but it's more of a general statement. For those departments that did not meet their budgeted revenue, this time around, did you basically tell the department heads, hey, why didn't you meet your expected revenues? And we don't want to hear those again because that's not good financial planning. We want you to be more realistic.
Right, and that will be part of the budget process, is reviewing each of those revenues that came in a little higher, came in a little lower, and trying to be a little more, match those revenues a little more closely in the coming fiscal year budget.
Mr. Chair, if I may, too, one of the things that we're actually being tasked on right now is to meet with the department heads to discuss their budgets, to basically answer those types of questions or get answers and basically track those situations, as well as some of the funding that hasn't been actually utilized for salaries, for instance, with job opening positions. So we want to look at and really tracking that and maybe capturing those funds and put them into a contingency for next year, because Supervisor Rivas is absolutely right with regards to next year, we still are very tight. We need to be very cautious with what we spend, and if we can go ahead and capture those funds, we need to capture those funds. So we'll probably be coming back to your board with that as well in the near future.
Yeah, I think, Supervisor De La Cruz brings up a good point, and for, staff to know that if we're not meet our revenue objectives, maybe in your adjustments is needed on the expense side as well. And things happen. Sometimes you don't pick up a grant or something, a project doesn't move forward on the timing that we, would anticipate. But those adjustments should be made, on a timely fashion. And that's why we're hopefully keeping a real close eye on it and all our finance people. Any other questions from Ms. Casillas?
So that's the fourth quarter. We wanted to continue on with the first quarter. That will be on Exhibit C, I believe.
And then page 296 of your budget package starts the first quarter reporting for fiscal year 13-14. I wanted to make a note that normally the first quarter runs July through September. I added in October. I thought it might be a little bit more relevant to try to get you more up-to-date information. So this actually runs through October, and so instead of 25% of the year expended, it's 33% of the year expended. So when you're looking at your total, at the percentages of the budget, and you see 33%, that's basically what I tried to provide to you, was through October and not just through September. Page 298 of your budget packet has the total expenditures to date for the general fund. And so as of October 31st, we had expended $8,748,758. That's roughly 26% of your budget, so we're running a little less than anticipated. And then on the revenue received, we've received $3,681,831, and that's roughly 11% of budgeted revenues. The following page are the other funds. I apologize, I did not take out the capital projects, and so the total, including those, run expenditures today are $11,039,296, and revenue received is $9,569,690. The following page, page 300, I believe, of your budget packet, I wanted to show you a 5-year history. It looks like our revenues are really low at 11% in the general fund. So I ran kind of a 5-year history trend of what we've actually received as of October 31st in various funds. And the general fund runs anywhere from 9% to 13% that we've collected as of this point in the general fund, and we're tracking at 11%, so we're right in there. So I didn't want you to think that we're way below in what we received in our revenue so far. It's just kind of slow at the very beginning of the fiscal year. So really, we're right on track with where we have been in the last 5 fiscal years. Any questions?
Okay, any questions? Yeah, that's what I've kind of observed as my time on the board, is that, that first quarter is you kind of get nervous about the revenue, but it really picks up in the second quarter and third quarter, and those tend to be a lot more important reports, and we certainly want to make this this is a habit that we have to have a quarter report to the board, and just so everybody's focused in on not letting things get too far adrift. Seo Espinosa.
Yeah, there's one thing I wanted to kind of answer. I know Supervisor Rivas requested this a couple of meetings ago. The questions that he had: where are we at? Where are we going? and you know, how we're doing. So basically receiving the report today kind of gives us where we're at, where we're going. You know, one of the things that you can highlight, and you know, it's just kind of showing the signs of our community and our county. On page 290, it kind of gives us on 185 budget unit, it shows that there's a slight increase with taxes and people coming into town with TOT taxes. So we can see that there's a healing process that's actually occurring within our county just by some of these numbers. Now, some of these numbers there's obviously some rollovers and some other funding there, so it's not entirely, you know, everything's there exactly. I mean, there's some other numbers that are associated with that percentage, but I just wanted to give the board and the residents community knowledge that we seem to be healing. We're still not there yet, but we're progressing. So, and the last one was, how are we doing? Well, we're tracking. I think with the budget so far, we're tracking. It's still tight, very tight, and we still need to kind of be very, got to gird up our loins and be very cautious of what we spend. And, that's kind of what I wanted to relay to the board.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public about our budget up to this point? If not, thank you, Melinda.
If I may, Supervisor Botello, there was another question that was brought up from the board, I think a meeting or two ago, about the sheriff's operations and also, kind of what we can do about possibly infusing some funding for the sheriff's organization. I think prior to the courthouse discussion, it was more for support in South County and the outlining areas. But, I just wanted to highlight for the board, we have a contingency of $684,000, but we need to be very cognizant of those funds. We need to be very careful with those funds. We still have a general plan that we need to finish as well, that we're probably going to have to allocate some funding from contingency as well. So, just wanted to make sure the board's aware of it and to make sure that, we'll have to probably really scrutinize any additional funding for security in the courthouse as well as deputies out in the field as well.
Yeah, we're not out of the woods by any stretch of imagination.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
It's we're nowhere near being where we need to be as, a county conveying, the level of, services we need to convey and well, we're doing the best we can. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to item 17.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have item 17 up on our agenda. This is going to be presented to us by Byron Turner. He's our interim planning director, and we're going to be giving a report back to the board on how the ad hoc committee actually met. I remember the days are all becoming a blur. I think it was last week, basically we're going to kind of give a report of what was discussed, and then let the ad hoc committee discuss their findings to the board.
So this was continued at the last meeting so that impact fee ad hoc committee could discuss it. I will give an update on the physical process. The home has been finalized. All the fees have been paid by the Homes for Troops organization. So we're there. It's just a matter of whether the board wanted to contribute to the funding.
Yeah, and as noted by our staff, we did meet last week. And this was one of the items that we discussed, Supervisor Munzer and myself, along with staff, the pros and cons as far as waiving the impact fees and the difficulty in doing so. As we received information, I think the full board received this information, that if we do waive the impact fees, the fees would have to be made up through our general fund back to the impact fees. And the other issue about this is that we would be making a contribution not to the individual that is going to live in the home, and we certainly have a debt of gratitude that we just will nobody could repay that debt as far as, you know, the impact of his life. And but our contribution would be to the homes for troops. That's where that money would go. It's a national organization, and we concluded that it would be very difficult for, at this point in time, to waive these fees for one organization kind of in the middle of our budget year with an impact on our general fund in light of, the budgetary constraints that this county finds itself under. As much as we would like to, I think the community could step forward and would be happy to contribute through fundraising and so forth to meet, that objective. But it's not inherently right for for us to gift this as a government and using taxpayer funds at this point with this particular item. We do that. We really have to consider other organizations, and we have had this discussion in July that, everybody wanted a little bit more money, whether it's suicide prevention for young people, senior advocacy, the food bank, community pantry organizations like that, and that's what makes this job so difficult. Wish we could give and give and give, but we kind of have to pick and set criteria as far as how we kind of move forward with this. And so it was the conclusion of the committee not to bring back a recommendation to fund this at this time. Supervisor Munzer?
Yeah, initially I was looking at deferring some of the impact fees, and then it was pointed out by staff that we would actually be penalizing the recipient of the home. We'd be penalizing the veteran himself, because it would be basically a lien on his house. If he went to sell it, then he would be out the money at the time of sale. And I also came to the conclusion that this request should have come before us at the beginning of this process, not at the end of the process. When when they first had the idea of building this home in San Benito County, they should have come before us with that request, and so I just cannot support this at this time.
Yeah, that's a real major fact that we discussed, is that if we deferred it, then the homeowner would have to pay anyway, and it's really a benefit to the organization. So that was a big change in the direction that we were trying to explore. Any questions or comments from the board?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, that I think then what we should do at this point is make sure that this organization is aware of all the, like Community Foundation. There may be grant opportunities that are specific for veterans through the Community Foundation, and somehow that message needs to get out to them. Since they're national, they may not be aware of the local help that is out there. So if we can turn them into that direction, I think somebody needs to make that effort. And also, if they want to, during the budget hearings, they could put their application in for help to the veterans when we do our CBO considerations for our sales tax distribution.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Marty Richmond from Hollister. As you know, I'm supportive of doing something. I think this is a good time to point out to the public, this is exactly the problem with all these earmarked money. We've got I don't want to go into the numbers, but we got a boatload of money sitting over in the city for first-time home buyers who can have that money at a very low interest rate, almost nothing, simple interest, for 30 years without making a single payment on it, due only after 30 years or when the house is sold. But you know, it's federal funds, and somebody designed that system so that it only can go to first-time home buyers under very specific conditions, probably because whoever did it, his brother-in-law is in the construction business. Okay, that's the way I see it. And so, you know, he's sending his brother-in-law some money. And we're stuck with that money and can't do a thing with it. We got money stuck all over the place with little pieces of paper stuck on it saying this is yellow money, you can't spend it for this. And we got green money and you can't spend it for that. And we give money to our friends over in the Monterey Air Bay Pollution Control District, and they give us back a car we don't want or need, in my opinion. We need the $6,000 to get the generator over at the fire department. It's carbed. We don't need the car. We'd rather have the $6,000 because they're going to wind up with it. So I know everybody thinks I'm a hard case when it comes to this, but this is ridiculous. So here we have the federal government who says they help our veterans out, and they got the money tied up doing something else because it favors some congressman or some senator or some member of the administration. As far as I'm concerned, it's baloney. There's no hard feelings of you guys. I understand we have a problem making up at a general fund. As far as the argument goes that Mr. Juergens wouldn't have to pay for it, you're right, he will not have to pay for it. But of course, it could go to someone else who's in exactly the same situation. They've built 143 homes, and they got 34 in process. It's true. They should have asked for it first. They made a mistake. But you know, we all make mistakes. So I hope when the time comes around, when you come out to give your CBO money, you're going to hear stories from everybody. I need it worse. I need it more. I need it more. I need it more. I can't imagine anybody who needs it more than the Juergens family, okay? And they did it for you and I so we could sit here and have our meeting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the comments. Anyone else from the public? If not, I guess, do we need a motion to go direct staff, or does staff kind of feel like they have direction, or?
Yeah, I think we've got direction here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think we all feel the same way as Marty feels, but you know, that's how it is. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, and we have Ms. Cochran on the appointment of the CAO position.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Previously, the board authorized staff to enter into negotiations and provided terms for a contract with Interim County Administrator Ray Espinoza. At the conclusion of those negotiations, Mr. Espinoza did agree to the terms of that contract, which is presented before your board for approval today.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? No, I'm only kidding, Robert.
I don't have any questions, but I do have comments.
Okay.
And I did talk to Ray earlier today because it's not easy. It's not easy speaking up, and it's not easy being the 4-to-1 all the time. But I told Ray, I assure you, this is probably the last comments, the harsh comments you're going to hear from me. So, and the truth is, I've been honored to serve my constituents in the 3rd District for nearly 3 years now. I'm not going to lie, it's not easy. It's not easy to be part of these decisions that we're about to make now, and a lot of the major ones that we have to make. This is a difficult job. But during this span, the last 3 years that I've been on this board, this is a board that has made many tough some decisions that will have a tremendous impact on the future of our county, of our city, and of our community. And some decisions have been easy, others have been difficult. And oftentimes I find myself in the minority and being outvoted by my colleagues on this board. And during those times I'd wondered, maybe I should begin to follow the status quo a little bit more. But the truth is, every single time I have spoken my mind, I've expressed my opinions, and have been outvoted 4-1, I've gotten phone calls. People have written to me. People have found me on Facebook. A good example is I was outside in the yard playing with my cousins playing ping pong, and I had some visitors in my garage. And they always have the same message. They say, thank you. Thank you for doing what is right. And that's why I've decided to always do what is right when I'm voting on difficult issues, exploring and exhausting all my options, seeking counsel and opinion from so many people in the community. Because in the end, I don't care if the decisions I make are popular or unpopular. And I'm certainly not worried about an election. I'm worried about one thing, and that is how my vote, how the decisions we make as a board will have a benefit for this county and for the constituents and for the people that reside in this county and live here. It's that simple, in my opinion. And so for the past several months, weeks, and today we are faced with the most important decision that we as a board can make, and that is the decision on who our next county administrative officer will be. And my fellow supervisors, my colleagues on this board, have already made up their minds. They've decided to hire Ray Espinoza. And while I wanted this vote to be unanimous, I cannot, in good faith, vote to hire Mr. Espinoza. Because in my opinion, and I've had this conversation with Ray, he's not fit for this job. He doesn't have the proper experience. And in fact, he should have never been interviewed for this job since he did not meet the minimum requirements for the job. And in my opinion, this entire CAO hiring process has been flawed. And to further complicate the process, Mr. Espinoza, in my opinion, has been less than honest about his credentials. And as I said before, he and I have had this conversation. I have major reservations about the degree he listed on his resume, which is from Alameda University. It turns out Alameda University is not a university at all. It's actually a sham organization that's based in the Bahamas. He paid this online business, and they in turn sent him a diploma. And essentially what happened is on the application, he tried to pass this fake diploma as a legitimate a degree. And it seems to me that when Mr. Espinoza realized he did not meet the minimum job requirements, he decided to go buy this degree. And I don't know if he made this decision on his own or perhaps was advised to go online and buy the degree. Whatever the case, in my opinion, it's sad. It really is. See, for me, this isn't about a college degree. It's about the process by which Mr. Espinoza decided to pursue his goal to become the administrator for this county. And instead of doing the right thing, this board took a step backwards. When it was revealed that Mr. Espinoza did not meet the requirements for the job, this board decided to change the rules in the middle of the game. This board has decided to reward less than honest behavior and change the rules so that our county administrator does not need to have a college degree. And we did this for one person. Not based on performance, but based on friendships. How can it be based on performance anyhow, when the body of work was so very small? And in my opinion, this is called nepotism. It is favoritism at its worst. We will now be the only county in the entire state of California with a full-time administrator who does not have a college degree. We should have done the right thing and had a formal interview process and given the job to someone who had the qualifications to manage a large multi-million-dollar budget. Especially, I feel very strongly about this because we did change the rules in the middle of the process. There are so many other applicants after we changed the rules that would now qualify for this position that we owed it to them out of fairness, out of favoritism, the apparent favoritism that's being exercised here today, to give those people the opportunity to apply for this job.
In fact, heck, I would have liked to apply for the job. I want it, you know, I want it to be a matter of public record. You know, it's easy. I'm not making this speech to anyone here, you know. Those that are watching at home, maybe the papers will pick it up. I don't know. I mean, this isn't easy to do this. It's not. But the reason I've done this is because I want it to be a matter of public record that I have from the very beginning stood against this decision. It is a major mistake in my opinion, and I do not and will not support hiring Mr. Espinoza, our next administrator. So with that, Mr. Chair, I rest my case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I could also have the opportunity to speak at this time regarding the decision that I will be supporting and that is supporting our interim CAO, Ray Espinoza. I don't believe, and if I believe this, I wouldn't be voting in his favor. I don't believe that the action that he took in putting down a university that perhaps was not an accredited university was not an intentional or something that he wanted to do to deceive the board. I feel that maybe it was somebody may have given him misleading information, but I have a lot of faith in him and a lot of trust, and I firmly believe that it wasn't intentionally to try to deceive the board. Secondly, as far as being the only county that will have an executive without a college degree, I can assure you that it's only going to be temporary. We have given him direction, and I am glad that this board supported me in making sure that in the ordinance that we give him the opportunity to obtain his degree, and that we have given him a timeline. And I believe, again, that I've got a lot of faith and trust that Ray will accomplish his degree goal within the time limit that we have given him, or very close to it. Last year, we gave him the incredibly huge task of seeing us through some major issues, and he didn't let us down. He sought out every conceivable resource locally, regionally, and statewide. This had possibly never been done before to this extent. He wasn't afraid of the challenge, and he earned the respect not only of the board, but of all the department heads in the county. When we threw him into that challenging situation, he did not have his degree, but he did have three things. He had courage, he had intelligence, and the will to work hard. You don't get this with everybody, even with people that may have a degree. And that's not to say that I'm minimizing that, but I just needed to point that out. He is no longer qualified, only a qualified IT manager. He is now and has been a qualified interim CAO for over a year. Throughout that year, he has proven his commitment to our goals, his ability to make changes, his management skills, and his leadership qualities. Why would I want to throw that out the window? I'm not. I am going to support him, and I want him to stay, to continue working for us. He's a proven individual in my estimation. The degree is important, and that is why I included it in the contract, as I said earlier. So now the way I feel is that we need to continue to work hard, and we need to get to work. Most folks out there, and I want the public to hear this, they don't understand, or maybe don't see, and I shouldn't say the word understand, they don't see the day-to-day operations that happen with an administrator. They don't see the meetings, they don't see the planning that is going on every day, every minute of a working day, and that our interim CAO has been directing. They don't see the progress that is taking place in many, many areas. Progress in negotiations, the way we do things, progress in litigation, progress in administration, and all the steps that are being taken to make San Benito County the very best county. Positive change, as all of us know, does not happen overnight in government. But every day, we, along with Ray, work hard in laying the strong foundation that it takes us to get there, and I believe he's doing that. So I choose to stand up and make the right choice for San Benito County and support Ray Espinoza as our CAO. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Barrios. Supervisor Windsor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to concur with Supervisor Barrios. I had a lot of people during the fair, when I had my fair, when I was manning my fair booth, come up and ask, or not a lot, but fair amount of people saying, why are you hiring someone that's not being truthful with you? And I told him, I don't feel that he was not truthful with us. And this decision is not based on friendship, but it's based on working experience that I've had with Ray over the last year. As Supervisor Marius said, we threw him out there in a bad situation. He sought out advice from other CAOs in the area on how to perform his tasks, and I think he did it admirably, and I think he has earned the right to continue forward as our CAO without the interim title. And I, too, support this action. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Cruz?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to echo both Supervisor Barrios and Munzer's thank you for those comments. And I also do support Ray. I've seen him in action. I've seen him when we appointed him as interim, the difficulty job that he was bestowed upon him, and he took it in stride and he took the challenges, and he did not have all the answers. I agree. However, there's a quality that he has, and that is seek help. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's okay. In fact, you become a better person with the people you surround yourself with. And for that, I have to commend him. I support Ray. It wasn't done on friendship. It wasn't done out behind closed doors saying, we are here today to make it official, make it yes or no vote today. And so, again, I support Supervisors Barrios and Munzer's position. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have to echo the three previous supervisors in the support of that this is the right appointment at the right time, right now. And Supervisor De La Cruz noted that we've been on the board, me and him have been on close to 9 years. Within that period of time, we've seen 5 CAOs, and they were college educated, highly experienced, and people that I admire, all of them, to an extent. But I'll tell you, the last year that I've served on this board, I have never felt that we've accomplished more than through the hard work of our CAO, his leadership with the other department heads, staff within the community with the 2 cities. Just the other day, I had a call into Mr. Grimsley, the city manager of San Juan Bautista, and he, unsolicited, he mentioned, gosh, I really enjoy working with Ray. And that means something. That Ray, Mr. Espinoza, he's vested in our community, and we went through exhaustive recruiting process. This was not a railroad job, and nobody in this public can accuse this board of railroading this process. We interviewed a number of applicants from all over our state and outside of the state, and for one reason or another, Ray rose to the top, and and I'm really pleased that he is serving in the capacity that he's serving for us. I agree, the college education is very, very important for most of our positions, but it should only be used as one component of the consideration. Hard work is another one. Honesty and integrity is another one. And he's vested in our community, and we weren't going to get that from anyone else. And I feel so confident that he's going to do a good job for years to come. And this county is moving in the right direction right now. We have our little bumps in the road like the court security, but we'll get through that. But with Ray's leadership in the administration, he fulfills the objectives of what we've asked him for the last year. And, you know, I'm looking forward to moving forward with them now. And with that, I think we all had our say. I'll open it up for public comment before we bring it back to the board for a decision.
Marty Richmond from Hollister. The first thing I'd like to do is sympathize with Supervisor Rivas, because I get outvoted 5-0 all the time, both here and at the city, and if I go to one of the other meetings, I get outvoted there too. So believe me, I have sympathy, and I do the same thing. I hold my ground, what I think is the right answer, and so there's never any hard feelings when I get voted. People, they all nod their head yes, and then they vote against me at the city council. It's kind of a given. We all now know it's a joke there. So here, most of the people at least are kind enough not to nod yes and then vote against me. So you have my sympathy, Supervisor Rivas. I'm going to take the rare position that I rarely take and punk out on this, but I am going to tell you why. I have a neutral position on this, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I am very comfortable with some areas and uncomfortable with others, and I'll tell you why at the end. It's your decision, and you should support your own mind. So what I'm comfortable with is some people just have a knack for good management, and the best indicator of how they're going to do in the future is how they've done in the past. That's my experience on the job. It's better than any resume you ever can have, is if you know how the work that people do. You've had experience with them. I personally think that establishing friendships is actually a big plus, especially in a job like this one. So you know how Mr. Espinosa's worked, and if you like the work he's done, then you should reward him for that work. That's my opinion. I think his qualifications are particularly weak in one area, which is the political infighting that happens only occasionally, not every day. And therefore, I hope you'll be very careful not to put him in a position where he gets overwhelmed on some political infighting issue that has nothing to do with management. It has more to do with politics. And you'll have to be careful there, and I'm concerned about that. And I've spoken to him directly about that, so it's no surprise to him that I've told him I'm concerned about that. I would like to see him had more years of the political infighting to know that he can handle it. But as far as his administrative capabilities, you know that better than anybody, and you're the best to determine how that goes. Having a college degree doesn't mean much to me, probably because I don't have one. So it is, however, here's my general rule with people who I've worked for and people who work for me. So I've been on both ends of the stick. If I want you to do the job, I should give you the people you want. If I insist on giving you the people I want, then I can't expect you to get the result you want. You should pick the people you want because their performance is your responsibility. If I give you the people I want, then their performance is my responsibility. And I've always told my bosses that. If you want to give me a goal, fine. Then you have to let me have the people I want so that I can achieve that goal. So that's the situation you're in. I assume you know that when you do your voting, and so you are accepting the responsibility, and I wish everybody involved good luck. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Anyone else from public? If not, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the appointment and of the contract with Reyes Mills as a CAO officer effective November 19, 2013.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? No. Okay, 4-1. Congratulations, CAO Espinosa. I'll give you the floor for a few words.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I want to first thank the board, as well as employees within the county and also the residents within the community. It's really been an honor and a privilege to serve in this capacity as the interim CAO for the last year, a little bit over a year. Really, I kind of liken it to being fast and furious. It really has been a very quick-paced year. There's been a lot of activities. We've done a lot of things over the year. The fire consolidation, we've streamlined the budget process, we've started the ERP project within the county. More importantly, we've are addressing the hemorrhaging that we've been confronted with from a fiscal point of view on the county side of things, and there's a lot of work still that needs to be done with that, but we're working at it, and that's been a big part of this year, and strategically placing ourselves in the right position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be coming back to your board probably at the beginning of the year to give you a full report over the year's activities, as well as what we're going to do the next year. So I just wanted to make sure that the board's aware of that, probably being the first or second meeting in January, where we're going to be presenting that to you. With regards to the next few years, I'm going to be very busy. I do have an associate's degree. I do have over 140 credits. So I am actually planning on continuing my education to finish it, and just wanted to make sure that the board and public were aware of that. So, again, I'm really excited to be here. It really is an honor and a privilege to be working with your board as well as the employees within the county. And I really look forward to making our community a better place to live as well as a better place to work. And that's really what I like to do, and I work very hard at it.
Great. Thank you. We have all the confidence in the world and a lot of challenges and hurdles to overcome, and we look forward to doing that. Thank you. That concludes up to our regular session until closed session. And is there a reason why we have 21 behind the closed session? Or
Yes.
There is?
There is.
Oh, okay. Then we'll...
And it will be revealed in closed session.
Okay. Let's try to do this then. We'll go ahead. Can you report for a closed session?
Yes,
County
thank you,
Council?
Mr. Chair. The Board of Supervisors will now adjourn into closed session to discuss agenda items number 19 and 20 on today's agenda. Agenda item number 19 is to confer with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the initiation of litigation pursuant to subdivision D4 of section 54956.9 in one case. Agenda item number 20 is to confer with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 D2 and E2, and that is also in one case.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment on our closed session items? If not, we'll adjourn to closed session.
It'll probably leave.